Mark Wylie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, the whole conversation for this came up because pretty much everyone that's been on this show so far has brought up your band Maitreya, and it's like a real Oshawa favorite, you guys, I think. So, this is like a metal band. Why don't you talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, we started out as a metal band, and I think as we evolved, we just started getting weirder and weirder, I guess. I feel like we never really quite fit in the metal scene in a way. Like obviously we were doing the heavy stuff, but I always kind of felt like there were elements to our sound that were like kind of on the fringe.
Yeah, well, and I feel like metal hits this like catch-all space of like everything that's not rock, but it's kind of like rock. And like anything that you want to be like really technical with the instrument, right? Right, outside of like I guess classical or like a jazz kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely where we're kind of going with the project. I often say that we're kind of like a jazz band that plays metal. Like I think the ethos is more in the sense like there's sort of like that jazz thing where we're thinking we're sort of drawing more from the language of things you kind of find in jazz. I mean, I'm listening to more jazz now than I'm listening to metal, but I've spent so many years doing metal as like the medium that what ends up happening is like if I try to play like jazz standards, like I don't have the vocabulary or like the aesthetic to try and do like an authentic Charlie Parker or like a convincing Coltrane kind of thing. But like growing up in Oshawa or growing up with like, you know, the Metallica and like maybe the modern metal thing with Periphery or Meshuggah, there's like a certain medium that we're kind of channeling the the vocabulary of, you know, contemporary jazz harmony or like you were sort of saying with like the classical style composition where you can get technical and you know, it's like people often say like, oh, metal is like classical if you add it over overdrive. That kind of stuff.
Well, and the thought that keeps popping into my head every time I've been at one of your shows is like it's got this kind of magic of Disney quality to it, right? Do you know what I'm kind of talking about? Like, it almost sounds like if there was like a Disney movie with a metal soundtrack, this is what it would be.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because there's one song that has kind of people have kind of begun to recognize, and it's called Wonder House. And,
I have a story about that one too.
And we can talk about that because I think that's an interesting sort of story of like how we've kind of evolved. Like there's kind of a lineage that we can talk about how we got there.
Sure.
But there's a movie that was on. My daughter is 4 now, but when she was like 2, turning like 3, that entire year we watched Disney's Encanto.
Okay.
And that Wonder House is like Encanto. It's like my take was like what would a wonder house, like what would a magical house do? And I guess on like a more like mystical standpoint, like the wonder house is like the world or the universe.
Okay.
So it's like you're talking about like I'm trying to figure out how do I take a prompt like a song title or like a concept of, you know, a Disney house doing whimsical, magical things, and then you're sort of funneling that through. Okay, how do I make a song? How do I make the riffs? How do I make this thing have like the mirth or the whimsical or the magic or the wonder? And you're just having fun with it.
Well, and so my story with this thing was, you played this. I think it was your closer when you did Battle of the Bands 2 years ago.
It was the opener.
Okay, yes. No, so a mutual friend of ours, Peter Roberts, was helping me recording that show. And he was like playing around with, he had like a big gimbal camera rig that he was trying out that day. And I was just interested to see the footage. So I was like, hey, could you send it over? Like, I'm interested in maybe buying one of those. And I'm just like, just to see, like, judging it as a camera person and not as a musician person. And the clip he sent me was, like, the camera's right up against your guitar when you were playing the solo in Wonder House. And like a press play and you it's like, whoa, that's a lot of music right there. And it's just like such a mind-blowing thing. It's got so much like color to it. Like I want to get into how do you really approach songwriting at like a technical level? Because like there's a lot of people who do like the 4-chord kind of songwriting and just like are struggling to make the jump past that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of the conversation I wanted to have today.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely recognize that. I think the answer for that is really just studying of harmony. So I do think of harmony a lot like color, and I think of like what you would call like tonal, like major or minor. That's like one band of colors. So you have like, take your 7 chords, 7 centers of major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And those all have like a certain flavor, and they all have a certain stability or a certain magnetic kind of force that comes with it. But then you can kind of begin to go down or like expand. I kind of picture it like kind of like a kaleidoscope. So as you sort of leave the tonal system, there would be, in my mind, this like secondary dominant system. So every one of those centers has a dominant function you can approach it to.
Okay.
So if anyone's listening who's trying to, explore harmony, learn your major scale, but then go into the secondary dominant territory. But then as you kind of begin to unfold, look into modality, so parallel modes. So you can go from if you're in, say the key of C, you can have C major, you can have C minor in parallel. And then you can have any mode stacked from the parallel. So C Phrygian, C Dorian, C Mixolydian, C Aeolian. You can go into all the other crazy ones, C harmonic minor, C melodic minor, and then those have a system. So it's kind of like, if I can give you like a visual, it's like you have one circle, and then there's another circle, and another circle, and they all kind of pan out. And as you kind of spread through the different circles or different spheres, new colors begin to emerge.
Well, there's this like you can move either around the circle or outward and inward on the circle.
Yeah.
Right?
So even thinking about like if you took like C major, like you picture like one of those like circle of fifth type things. Like I think a lot of people are like really good at working with the first circle. Like, okay, I'm going to work on C major and work on the chords in that sort of primary key. But then there's ways of like changing the center and changing, like, again, going in parallel and opening up these different spheres is, I think, part of the way I'm visualizing it, or part of the way I'm accessing colors in my writing.
Okay. And I mean, because there's the technical side to like doing complicated stuff, but then there's also like where do you find the motivation to like keep pushing yourself and keep getting more complicated? Is more complicated even the goal?
Yeah, it's not. So, I mean, I think when I started out, when you're trying to learn the craft or learn the instrument, I was pretty obsessive with like developing the technique and the craft. But then somewhere along the way, like that doesn't really give you like what you're trying to say. It's just like, it's kind of like the vehicle. Technique will be the vehicle for which you have to express. But if you only have the technique, what are you trying to say? So I think when you said the motivation, it really comes down to like what is the intention.
Yeah. And I guess it changes from song to song, from band to band, right?
Yeah. So like I have like a note, like a word list, and I'll make a song. Like I'll have like, oh, that was an interesting thing that happened in a conversation, or I saw this on a podcast, I'm gonna write that down. So like all of the songs. A lot of times, a lot of the songs by Maitreya, the working title becomes the actual title because there's enough of a concept built in. So like we're dropping a new song on Monday, March 23rd, called Utopian Plague.
That's gonna be the release date of this, actually.
Sweet. All right, check it out.
Check it out.
Simple plug. But like that, I heard on a podcast, and just the way the title or the words work. It has a paradox and a contradictory statement inside the title. And then like my motivation would be, okay, there's utopia and there's plague. So if I'm writing a song, how do I give the listener something utopic, euphoric, grand, that kind of side of things, but then it's a plague. So then that kind of gives me permission to go like full extreme, heaviest, darkest source I can kind of go from. And then since you have this title or concept that kind of gives you, again, I think one of the key words is permission. I've been kind of finding is I always kind of ask the music the question based on the title. So if I get in a roadblock in the writing, it's like, well, what does the song concept or title, what is that telling me to go through? So if I get into a section, I'm like, what has to happen next? And you kind of go, well, here's the brief, here's the concept. How do I try to craft the vibe, the atmosphere to that?
So are you like you want to do it all in one sitting kind of person, or like a sit, work on something for like an hour or two, and then, okay, we'll walk away from it for a couple weeks maybe, come back to it?
Yeah, I mean, I used to try to follow that. There's a John Lennon quote that's like, finish it in the sitting. And I think just based on the nature of how my writing has evolved is that it's really not possible to get. I mean, I don't have. if I had the time,
if your sittings were 36 hours,
if
right?
I was in my early 20s and had the amount of time at my disposal, maybe that would still be the case.
1 second.
Yeah, all good. But yeah, I'm more of like, we take the example of Utopian Plague. That was kind of like Monday to Friday. I kind of get into the studio, I put in my 3 or 4 hours, and I kind of just I come back to it and I push the ball forward. And that was like a 4 or 5 day project, just putting in probably, I don't know, upwards 10 plus hours. And yeah,
so when you're getting into longer sessions like that, how do you keep on track, and how do you like know that you're making progress forward and you're not working backwards at some point?
Yeah, I mean, that can happen, but I think one of the beautiful things is actually stepping back sometimes, because I think once you kind of get in the creative mindset, your subconscious is always kind of working on it. So sometimes if I get stuck and I know I'm stuck, I'll be like going for a walk, and then it'll occur to me like, oh, that could be the thing. So sometimes not being in the space is a good way to go. And I think also just like listening, like if I'm like 3 minutes in to what could become like a 9-minute song, just like having a moment where you're kind of just listening to it, it'll kind of refresh. And I think I am pretty conscious to try and leave things nowadays where I'll leave the session being like, I know how to pick this back up. Like I'm not leaving with question marks, I'm leaving with like a ...
Okay. And like, so I wanted to say, like, how do you keep on track is one thing here, but how do you, because I've had this thing where like with certain songs I'm trying to work on where I'm like, sit down, try to record it, maybe it's not ready yet, and then you walk away from it, and then a month later I have a completely different like rhythmic idea for the song, and it completely changes into something else. It's like how do you know when something is done? And how do you know when to keep working on it?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for that, but I think every song will have its own life. It'll have their own growth, which is I think part of naming it is kind of important, because it kind of gives it an identity right away. And
that's something you mentioned, of like the working title versus the release title, and like sometimes the working title becomes the release title, and like how do you decide like when to change that and where to pull the inspiration from? Because sometimes like the title is like where the whole song came from, right? And sometimes it's like I need to come up with a name for this.
Yeah, and I'd say that like this is maybe just my approach, and there are times when I just sit down and play the guitar, and things will emerge, and there's a certain sense of like, it's almost like therapy sometimes, where you kind of sit down and you're like, you almost kind of get these like Freudian psychology things that come up, like, oh, I didn't know I was feeling this way kind of thing, but I guess by sort of like channeling how I'm feeling through the music, you kind of have these like moments of like, oh, I didn't know that's how I felt about whatever. So I guess there's times when you don't always know. Like there would be times where it's fine to not know what the song is called, just because you can just be kind of, I don't know, not ignorant, but you can be kind of like
it's not frozen into anything yet. Right? It's still like really fluid and it's more experimental.
That's a great term. I noticed that with some of the band stuff is that if I pitch a new song to the band, there's a period in time where it is fluid and we can make changes to the arrangement, we can make changes to like a lyric or things like that. But as time goes along, it gets like more frozen and it becomes really hard to kind of like
well, and like if it's not frozen, like you can't perform it. Right? Like you do have to have a plan before you go on stage with this song, right?
Right. So I would say maybe just try to do most of like the legwork while it's fluid. It can be hard. Like some of the things I do in my solo stuff, I'll write the songs from January until December, and I won't record them. I'll just kind of live with them. But then come the Christmas break, I've been having this sort of annual tradition where come Christmas till like post New Year's, there's a certain vibe or a certain like auspicious thing that happens for me around New Year's where I like to try to like capture the music in that time frame. So that would be a case where like I've written the songs, I've kind of prepped them, but if I wrote a song in January and I'm recording it in December, I'm going to revisit it a little bit. Like I'm going to tinker with little things, but I'm going to try it again, like kind of heat it up and make it a bit more fluid for a moment and then kind of try to capture it.
Well, and I guess because there's two kinds of working sessions when you're like getting into recording and producing something. There's like the really sitting down and like tracking everything. And then there's more of like a sit back, like listen to the song for what it is and like try and figure out what it needs, right?
Yeah. I don't know how to follow that one up. I don't know how to follow that one up.
Yeah, no. Okay, you know what? You suggested bringing a guitar today.
Yep.
And I suggested we're going to do this one a little bit differently than usual. Want to go grab that and have like a bit of a how do you do songwriting conversation? Sure. And also, this is for my reference, but people watching might want to know, because you had a very particular way you wanted this mixed.
Right.
Just say it for the camera.
Yeah. I guess there's a very particular way I play the guitar. I guess it's called fingerstyle. The goal with fingerstyle is to kind of be like the entire band in some sense. So there's like, I kind of picture the process being like there's a vocal line or a top line, there's a bass line, maybe there's like a backbeat doing a bit of a drum beat. And then I think kind of once I get like the top line, the bass kind of figured out, almost last, I kind of think like what would the guitar part do in the band? So I'm in this tuning, well, just again to the sort of the tech production kind of thing. We were talking about the DI capture.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge DI capture kind of guy. I don't like the sound of the DI for like the kind of I guess the piezo on the bridge. It's very thin and pokey and stabby. But like a microphone is going to capture more of like the overall bloom and spectrum of the guitar. But what I will do is, since we're talking about having the guitar be the full spectrum, is I use the DI to only be the bass, so like sub 100 hertz. And that way, if I hit like a low note, that note can kind of exist as my bass. And like the low end of that is kind of filling in where the bass guitar would kind of live sonically. And then if I were to kind of hit like some kick drum kind of things, that's going to be in that, 60 hertz kind of kick drum range. And then I take, I recently got this microphone that's kind of like my
Get the real close up on that.
This is my baby.
Pay for that logo.
Yeah, this is a 10-year investment that I'm gonna sort of pay off for the next lifetime. But this microphone I kind of will roll off 100 hertz and above. That way I kind of just have a bit of a separation.
Okay. So you're low passing the DI and you're high passing the microphone.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. Yeah, so I'm in this tuning. A lot of what I do is open tuning based. I think it's really hard to play solo guitar in a standard tuning. So there would be a lot we could talk about with the sort of the philosophy with open tuning, but my approach with open tuning is to really utilize fourths and fifths.
Okay.
So if you have a tuning system, so this one I have here it's a DAD-GAD variant. So we have D, if we go from the 6th string, this is a C in the bass, and I have a G on the 5th string, and then from here it's your regular DAD-GAD, D, G, A, D. And the way, we were talking about this a little bit before, but I think when you get into the open tuning system, a big way I process this is really in terms of degrees. So I'll kind of give a bass string. If we're going, I think I'm really a bottom-up kind of guy, so I'll think in terms of the bass chord progression kind of thing first. So I think there's a song I have in this tuning, I think I put number 1 here on the G string.
Okay.
So this would be my center, which means I kind of want to think about where that center is, also on the 6th string. I think of the guitar a lot like a tree, so I want to know that the trunk of the tree is like firmly in the ground before I start to figure out what the melody is.
And like be able to quickly find it when you need it.
Right.
Okay.
So if I kind of establish that this is 1, then you can kind of maybe go through major scale.
Okay. But the bass line is moving on a major scale and you're doing like a fixed thing on the other strings.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where the 4th and 5th come in. Is the 4th and the 5th will be stable, and it's not coloring the sound of the key yet.
Okay.
So what colors the key is a 3rd or a 6th, really.
Yeah.
The 7 can color it, the 2nd can color it, but as long as I say in a tuning system that's like 1, 4, 5, maybe I can have like 1. I won't commit too much with open strings that might have one of those color notes.
Okay.
2 you can kind of get away with, because 2, if you go 1 to 5, and then 5, sorry, I'll say that again. A perfect 5th from 1 to 5 is a 5th, right? But another 5th from 5 is 2.
Okay, I see.
So 2 is kind of allowed, but as soon as I color a tuning with a 3rd, I'm kind of boxing myself into major or minor.
Okay, I see.
So I'll explain that. Like I was just playing, if I do this, I can hit flat 3, or I can play a natural 3. But nowhere in the other strings is it conflicting with my ability to color in this sort of chromatic approach.
Okay, interesting.
So if I'm just gonna improvise, in my brain might be like flat 6, flat 7, 1, like 3, and then I could do like a, what's that? That's 4, and then we kind of get into more of the colors. And this is where I kind of go blind sometimes, where I can
Yeah, and that's the thing is sometimes the numbers fade away and it becomes just intuitive, right?
Yes. And my brain will often figure it out. Like if I kind of find like that, I'll know that that's an octave, and I can kind of like begin to. Okay, so there's, you know, I know that that's a. Am I? Yeah, that's a 3rd. It's like okay, that's like a.
So how do you develop the ability to like audiate in your head and like imagine what the next note you play is going to sound like?
Yeah.
Is that a way that you're thinking, or?
Yeah, there is a way to train that. It takes a long time. It's things like really like I think solfege is gonna be the one way to do it, because if you learn solfege, You hear my terrible singing do re mi fa sol la ti do ti la so fa mi me re do. If you can kind of like sing the values in solfege, then solfege tells you which degree you're on.
Yeah.
And those kind of become like the triggers. So if I kind of hit a note, like something might trigger in my ear that kind of says, oh, that sounds like me re do, which is like, okay, that's a flat 3. It's like they kind of compress into this one thing. But I think, like you're saying, it's my brain can turn that on, but I'm really not thinking at all when I'm doing that. It's just like,
well, and that's like when you're in the songwriting state, like you're alone working on something rather than like on stage playing a solo.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be a period where you're working on the craft and you're studying, but when you're writing, like I think you're trying to turn all when you're like really trying to connect with the writing and let the music flow through you, you're trying to turn off all the switches. You're trying to exit the building and just let the thing come through through. So it's important to like sometimes I'll turn on a switch that's like, what I need to know, like I want to do this kind of thing, like how do I find that? And I'll kind of,
let's do it in 7 this time.
I'll begin turning on some things that's like, okay, where am I theoretically or harmonically? But most of the time, it's just like, let me just sort of like listen and just sort of like, it's also a lot of guessing and it's also a lot of mistakes sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, you get these beautiful mistakes that's like, oh, I didn't know that could happen. And that's one of the beauties with open tuning.
Well, and there's like mistakes that are like, I hope I never do that again. And there's mistakes that are like, ooh, I could use that.
Yeah, and this with open tuning is like you can kind of guess. So you get a shape. Oh snap, that's cool. That one didn't work, right? So one shape can kind of yield some interesting results. And there can be just sort of like guesswork that goes in.
Yeah.
Which is, I think. Talking about, I think maybe one of the reasons why I was drawn to this is when you do a lot of studying of the guitar in standard tuning, you really begin to build up all these walls and all these shapes and all this like theory, and then some of the magic is lost because you kind of know where you've mapped things out. There's not that like wonder that's happening.
Yeah.
So as soon as you start to change this up, this whole thing becomes a new playground for you.
No, and like that's kind of what we were talking about before because I was saying like I've never really messed around with open tunings myself, but like now that you mention it, I think I understand what you're saying where you kind of get boxed into like certain riffs that just are really under your hands and then you change the tuning and suddenly they're not available anymore.
Yes.
And you have to think more.
Yeah. So I think that's a totally thing, totally a thing that all guitarists will run into is they kind of get into familiar patterns, familiar shapes, things like that. And I think there's kind of a war happening between the hand and the ear. So what happens is if the hand knows, like we don't want the hand being the boss all the time. We want the hand to kind of be like the servant, and we want the ear or the brain to be the king. And I think a lot of times you hear guitar players who just kind of go into autopilot mode, and you can kind of tell the hand is like trying to be king.
Yeah.
But I think part of the more intention-based thing is like drawing it from like what do I think I'm trying, like what do I hear? How do I take the emotion or the sound or the intention I have in my head and make my hands execute that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's like so how do you kind of reset it when you get into the like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, I mean that happens.
Like, have you been like, or and I mentioned this on with someone else recently, where it's like sometimes you'll pick up the guitar and just feel like I don't know anything to play right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the important skills for all musicians is to develop this like working memory. And even when we were talking about setting this interview up, like it's it's really hard to remember some of the things I play. If I don't play them regularly, I have blind spots, and it's like the other blind spot too is like if I don't have the tuning like remembered, like that song doesn't exist.
Oh, like you forgot what tuning it was in.
There's so many different tunings at this point where I need to know how to find the tuning because.
Well, and this is why and some people end up with 5 guitars on stage, is so you don't have to change tuning, you just change guitars.
I wish I had the budget for that.
Yeah, you could lower your standards and just do everything on cheap guitars.
There you go.
That's one compromise.
I'm a bit of a monogamist when it comes to acoustic guitars.
Okay. You know what? Actually, talk more about this guitar.
Yeah. So part of my philosophy is like this was once a tree. Right, we kind of made that analogy before. And the more you play one guitar and the more you connect with that guitar, that tree is now like, oh, I'm a guitar. You know what I mean? Like it becomes more like a guitar.
Well, and
the guitar essence becomes more guitar.
And it's like very much paired to you as well, right?
It's almost like almost like what's the Avatar thing where they they take their thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah,
you dressed the part for that one.
Next.
No, but I've had that same thought where, because the one that I have, it's a Godin 5th Avenue, the arch top. And I realized it's like cherry wood. I'm like, not only was this once a tree, this was once a cherry on a tree that fell into the ground, grew, was harvested, was processed, was turned into a guitar. And then I spent a couple thousand hours with it, right?
Right.
And like, the more time you're playing that guitar, like parts of you get baked into it, right?
Yeah, there's something like on a DNA level.
Well, and I mean, look at it.
It's pretty crusty, I know. I need to do a better job cleaning it. But,
yeah, well.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, whenever you change strings, you kind of start scraping it, and then you're like, am I damaging it? Fuck it.
I don't care enough, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I know.
No, and like, if it's your one guitar, you kind of get comfortable with the fact that it's going to get worn eventually, right? Like, I've got the lacquers kind of starting to crack off on mine, and I think it looks cooler.
Yeah. I feel like a new guitar feels so... I mean, like, you get like a new pair of shoes, and they're like, it's not broken in. It's like, it's not comfortable. Something about a used guitar. I'll be more specific, because I feel like I do like a new electric guitar. Like, something about that has to kind of have
got the new car smell.
But something about like it being an acoustic instrument, the wood has to kind of like, the more you play it, the wood is still kind of like, it's still alive, and the molecules are still kind of like resonating. So as you keep playing, like it's vibrating, like it's still like it's alive, it's still happening, it's still moving, it's still shifting, it's still like contouring to what you do to it. So
yeah, well, I think it's kind of always going to be changing like that tonally, right? Like, well, you know that feeling of like you change strings on the guitar and it feels completely different in sometimes not the way you were hoping, right? And it's just like because dead skin and crap builds up on them, you tend to get like a darker sound over time out of one particular set of strings, right? I've never thought too much about like how does the actual tone of the guitar change over time though.
It'd be super subtle. I think
it's one of those.
It's probably more poetic than it is.
Yeah,
like,
well, and I think
scientific.
Definitely the real effect here is like you're getting used to the guitar, right? And your hands kind of feel it more naturally and intuitively, right?
There's something about, I like the mythology of just like giving it this sort of nice poetic thing. I mean, is there a chance it's just a bunch of bull and scientifically nothing's happening? Yeah, but it's not as fun.
But you know, okay, so like this was something I did want to mention because you talk about music very differently than most other people I come across, right? Like you talk very poetically about even things like music theory that a lot of people kind of dread. Like, what's your philosophy here with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think music is God.
Okay. Let's get into it.
So, I think this is a concept I took from Victor Wooten, and his thing was like the etymology of music is MU is mother.
Okay.
And like the SIC would be like sciences or science.
Okay.
So music, in my mind, is like the mother of all sciences. And if you were like an Einstein, you'd say, or any of the physicists have sort of realized that everything is vibration. Everything is just a wave kind of moving. And if you kind of go on to like the what's that, quantum level, like you sort of see that everything is just kind of vibrations. And then if you kind of go on to the more spiritual level, then we sort of say that this is kind of all like the Maya or the illusion. So music is like the divine mother. It is like the manifestation of, it's like the reality kind of bending and moving. So on a micro level, when we're creating music, we're kind of like doing that on a very microscopic level, what God's doing on like a grand sort of universal, like we're moving chords, but he's moving planets kind of thing.
Okay, that's so cool. So, I wanted to go somewhere with that, and I can't remember now. No, but like, because you keep talking about like the how it's like related to science, and that's like in my life, I went off not to music school, to engineering school, and I did math and science and all of this stuff, and I got out of it because it was boring. But for a while, when I was getting kind of more into music again, seriously, and I had this one time where I was like lying in bed and I was thinking about like major scales and modes and stuff, and I just kind of realized like a bunch of things clicked into place where I realized like, oh, there's math behind why all of this stuff fits together, right? And like the basic level of it being just like fifths and octaves are like the building blocks for kind of the entire chromatic scale, right? And if you go up, 12 fifths gives you the same as 7 octaves, and there's like an equivalency there. But it's like, if you actually do the math and look at the numbers, it's like 0.2% off or something. But it's like a fuck it, just round it off, and like it's good. Don't be a nerd, bro. Right. But there's all these like freaky coincidences once you start really like diving into the technicality of music theory, right?
Yeah, and I think I also I don't think it's like it's hard to say music theory. Like,
yeah, music theory is like really how you would describe it when you're trying to talk about a class at school.
Like you would say like biology theory. Like when you see a plant grow, it's like we have like a scientific method. So it's really music. The way music works is just the way that nature works. Like it's operating on the same universal properties. And yeah, I think what's also cool about some of this is that as you kind of progress in any field, whether it's like engineering or music or visual arts or really any kind of art, as you kind of climb up the ladder of any craft, you kind of get to these like, there's like a pinnacle where all like I could talk to like an engineer, or I could talk to
there's bridges between different fields,
and we can all sort of share like balance and composition and dynamic and like proportion. Like there's something that's shared universally along those things, and I think sort of like hunting for those universal truths is like really what like motivates me to kind of like keep going, like keep searching.
And it's got, you get into this kind of like everything is art and nothing is art kind of mentality, right? Where it's like if you're talking about like, I can have an artistic conversation with a scientist, right? Like I think most people would agree science isn't art, but there's this similar thing you're doing where you're trying to represent a larger thing inside of a smaller thing.
Yeah, I would say that like there's what we would, when you think of like, I don't know, a physicist doing like an equation with numbers and they're trying to balance things or trying to solve something, it doesn't seem artistic, but like I think their art is like making the equation work. So I think, like I said, I think it's like any field. Like it could be like archery, it could be like martial arts. I think all practice, if you kind of follow a practice, you follow a thing, you will get along the road. I think it takes, I would say like 10 years of just like walking down any road, you will kind of arrive at these like universalities.
So here's, I guess, the question then is like, what makes music different?
It's invisible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I guess because you can represent really anything with music, right? In a way that with like visual arts, there are, emotions you couldn't necessarily convey, right? I guess you can, right? It's a creativity of the particular artist, right? But in a sense of like, so like a scientist, sticking to that example, can like express themselves creatively in their work. How is that like not the same thing as a musician? Because I feel like in some way, like music is more than that, but I don't know how to, like, what is the line in the sand there,
I think
you think
that's part of like the wonder and the mystery. You're like, what?
Right? Because we just came from like music is God to like,
what is it?
But it's kind of like just working at like an engineering firm.
Yeah, I mean, there's times when I'm working with a band where I feel more like a programmer.
Yeah.
Like with the amount of like.
Well, and when you're getting into like production, of course, right?
Yeah. So.
And you guys have like a lot of like Ableton Live stuff kind of incorporated into your set, so you are programming.
Yeah. to do a Maitreya show is like, there's so much like. I'm not a coder, but like I know that what I'm dealing with is like lines and lines and lines of code to kind of get like the MIDI, the effects, the tracks, the routing, like the actual engineering and the technology. I mean, like I think technology has been a key like trend with the band for the last many years, and it's fascinating how the technology evolutions sort of like change how the music is like produced. I find that pretty fascinating as well.
So that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of like the history of music technology, right? Because there was a time where all music was live music, right? Recording didn't exist. And if you wanted to hear any music, you had to go usually to a church, but to a show of some kind. But there was this like demand for a way to consistently reproduce a song that for technology that didn't exist yet, right? So because that technology didn't exist, people were willing to pay any amount of money for it and throw millions of dollars, billions of dollars in today's money at this problem. And they came up with like wax cylinder recordings, right? And then, okay, we like this is great. It built an industry. Let's make it better. We moved to vinyl and then tape and then digital. And all of it was like driven by demand for better quality and lower costs. And then now today we've kind of reached the conclusion of that where you can get outstanding quality at very low cost and anyone can do it. And it's not simple, but as simple as you can make it, I think. And I think that's where we end up at this problem now where there's so much content being just spat out into the world that will never be heard by anyone, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of hinted at something that's important is that I'm gonna say this sparingly because I can appreciate that music is entertainment and I can appreciate the industry side of music and that's totally cool, but you hinted at like in kind of the ancestry or the lineage of music was like it was sort of found in churches, it was sort of found in like tribal kind of gatherings, and the music was used to sort of like uplift as like a spiritual purpose, because you know any kind of chanting, any of these kind of traditions where the music is a way to take the soul higher than it would be without it. So the music can be like like a spaceship to get you to this sort of higher space, even just like any other kind of space. Like I think a good job that music can do is take you from one space to another. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think some of that's getting really blurry or kind of lost. And I think that's something that the band is trying to really achieve in our live show is that when you come see our show, we're trying to make it almost like you're at like a church or you're at like a shaman gathering. Okay. And we're trying to like, this is pretty lofty and pretentious, but like we're trying to achieve like a transcendental thing with the soul. And I think a lot of music in the industry is like, bam, you know, I'm in your face and I'm entertaining and I'm like, you know, there's all these kinds of things, and it's. I'm not saying that it's like void of any of the spirituality, because like I said, like all music is like the thing, like it is the source. But I think where it gets messy is the industry kind of having the goal be industrial and being kind of like, financial and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of doesn't have that same mystique or that same intention of being like nourishing for the soul.
Yeah. Well, and that's just like, it's something that I get kind of upset about, that so many people I know only want to interact with music as like recorded music and like are uninterested in going to a show, right? Like that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, which is just show people like, dude, there's nothing to be scared of. It's fun. You can go outside, right? And like, there's just this trend of like, a lot of people don't want to do shows anymore, right? And I think you swapped something really important for something that's sort of meaningless in a way.
Yeah, and there's definitely been a trend in the last sort of, I guess we're in what we might call like a post-COVID era, where there's artists who have really been able to develop their audience base and develop a career without ever having played live. Like they can just sort of like get their audience via Instagram, and like I'm not against that, but it's interesting.
Well, and you have these funny things where you hear about like a 18-year-old kid who's doing his first live show in a stadium to 10,000 people, right? Because he built the audience online before ever playing outside. Yeah,
which is, I mean, there's a part of that I think is good, because it's sort of it's almost in a way democratizing the ability for anyone to leverage to find an audience.
Yeah.
Versus like if we go back a couple of years, like there was there still is this corporate monopoly on the industry, but
but that's only if you want that kind of interaction with the industry. If you want to be on the radio, if you want to play stadiums, right? But if you're happy to do like Biltmore Theatre sized shows, you don't really need to bow down to the industry the same way.
That's true.
Right? So something I wanted to go back to with the whole spirituality thing is the name Maitreya. How did that happen?
Yeah, we were young.
Okay, because it rhymes with a bar nearby here, Atria.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also like a Buddhist term, right?
Yeah. So we were all kind of pretty heavily inspired by Eastern philosophy. Yoga is still like a very big part of my practice. So we kind of thought, and we were also into like sci-fi and comic books and things of that nature. So we kind of felt like the character Maitreya is what's called future Buddha. So it's kind of like a world teacher, like a Jesus or a Krishna or Muhammad. Sort of pick like a world teacher, and it's like that entity or being, but like in the future. So it's like this being or entity will at some point come to Earth.
The prophecy chosen one.
Right, which is like, I mean, Dune has that sort of arc, and obviously like Star Wars has that arc, like Harry Potter, like there's all these sort of like...
Well, it's a recurring theme because it's something that, like it's an archetype that needs to be filled, I think, in society, right?
Yeah, and that's the Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey. So I think that was like kind of part of our radar. It's just like, oh, cool, it sounds like a superhero. It's kind of like... Yeah, and I guess I was on a podcast last year, and they kind of had me walk into a trap that was like, oh, you guys are very humble because you're calling yourself, which I was like, I never even thought about that, and that's definitely not what we're
well, and because you're not calling any one of you the chosen one.
Yeah,
it's like the band is the chosen one, the music is the chosen one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that, but like I think the way I've evolved to try and interpret it is that it's kind of like there's in the sort of in like a mystic Christian kind of thing, they would say there's a second coming of Christ.
Okay.
And that's, in my interpretation, not a physical, like there's not going to be like an actual return. It's more of like every one of us is able to attain Christhood, Christ being like a state of being or a state of consciousness.
Okay.
So in my mind, Maitreya is like the process through self-growth, self-development that we can, through soul evolution, attain this like Christhood state of being.
Okay. That's no one in my circles at least really likes to mix the Western and Eastern kind of philosophies like that. I think that's a really cool thing.
You mean like Jesus being West and Krishna being East?
Yeah, well, but also like drawing the comparison between like Christhood being similar to like enlightenment.
Right.
And like seeing that they're not in conflict with each other.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably going to piss off some Christians, but
I know.
I'm sorry.
Some of them are looking for a fight.
Christ, in my mind, is like the title given to Jesus.
Okay.
And in certain interpretations too, Krishna, like the part of Krishna is also the title of Christ.
Yeah, I believe the Hebrew translation of Christ means anointed one, right? Like it wasn't his last name. It was a title that was given.
Yeah. So in my mind, it's a human. I mean, these people, again, there's more sort of depth to these world teachers because have evolved over, again, this might be going into too lofty of a concept, but they've attained a state of being that we are all able to accomplish. Like, I think it's not like I'm not going to say it. I think there's a certain perception that's like, oh, I could never achieve the miracles of blah, 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 blah. But it's like you yourself are able to do those things if you do ... Like you be a good person, you have a fulfilling life, you do good deeds, you know what I mean? But if you're, and this ties back to music where I think part of my philosophy with music and how that intertwines with the spirituality is as you kind of develop your craft on the instrument, you can only kind of get so far. Like almost music will kind of music will stop you and say, hey, like hold on. Like you have to give in order to get kind of thing. So like you can practice a lot and the Divine Mother will be like, great, like thank you for practicing the way in which I can express myself through you. But at some point, if you just try to keep writing and like recording and capturing and trying to like bottle her up, she's going to be like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Like, so part of my philosophy with music in that sense is like, okay, well, if I want to progress, I have to abide by certain like moral laws, like being a good person, all those things that kind of come with like your typical like 10 commandment type of things or 8 steps of, you know, the yoga or Buddhist thing. But even just like giving back, like I think that's why teaching is so important to me is that if I can pass along the things I've acquired, then through like giving back in some roundabout way, I can be kind of blessed to have these moments where she will kind of speak through me.
Yeah, well, and if we're relating back to like the music is God thing, God's not going to die when you die. God's going to keep going. What are you contributing to the future of this, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking down at the time here. We're almost done.
Cool.
You want to go through a quick song?
Yeah. So this song, do I want to do this one? Yeah, I'll do this one. This one's kind of nerdy. I'm not gonna set it up. I'm just gonna play it, and I guess something I'm curious about is, tell me what you think the song is about. I think there's a trend now with like the Instagram reel thing where it's like, oh, I just wrote a song about heartbreak, and you know the songwriter is telling you how you should feel before you start playing.
Okay.
So I'm curious, if I don't set it up, just tell me where the song takes you without me telling you where it should take you.
Cool. So I'm gonna say where that takes me. You guys leave that in the comments where it takes you, because we're taking a survey here. You know? No, to me that's like end of summer, transitioning into autumn. Like days are getting kind of shorter. Like you're sitting on the beach at the end of August in a sweater. That's where that's taken me.
Good. Then it worked.
Oh,
Because
is it right to ask you where it's taking you, or like where that's coming from?
Well, I'm always curious because, again, it's hard to ever grasp. But it's funny you mentioned when, because that you were right. So that says to me like, check.
Yeah.
Like the song did its job.
Artistically validating, right?
Yeah.
Well, it says like you nailed the feeling you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, the song is called Moonstone. So something about this is one of those songs where we talked about like sometimes I have a concept, and other times I don't really know what like what it's doing. But something about like the energy of a moon. The moon has a way of like when it comes, it's almost like the change of an era. So like when we celebrate key parts of the year, like Easter, different solstices are based around the moon cycle. So something about like what that moon comes to bring is like an interesting sort of phenomena. So it's something about like, the way we interact with the planets in some respects.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're going to leave it on that. Mark Wylie, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Steve.